My name is Omar Duque. I am the president of HITEC, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today for our HITEC Live webinar, 1 year later, doing well by doing good, as a continuation of Miguel Gamiño's session 1 year ago, which I know that I see some familiar faces who participated last year. Miguel came and talked about how doing well by doing good became an essential service. And we're bringing in the perspective of 3 additional Hispanic executives to share their vision on using tech for good as a business imperative. I am extremely excited for today's panel. So I am going to go ahead and introduce one of our speakers, and then she will introduce the rest of the panel. Rebeca will be our moderator today. Rebeca Yanez is a senior managing consultant in MasterCard's data and service business unit, working with MasterCard partners and clients to deliver a variety of data and analytical solutions. She's based out of San Francisco and came to Microsoft through an acquisition of a company called Applied Predictive Technologies, which specialized in helping organizations make data-driven decisions through test and control analytics. Rebeca cares deeply about diversity and inclusion and took on this year the role of global co-lead for MasterCard's Latin Network Business Resource Group, where she works closely with HITEC friend Miguel Gamiño and other leaders throughout the organization. Rebeca, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
So much, Omar, and thank you, Maria, and everyone at HITEC for the partnership to make this event happen. So I'm really excited because MasterCard very recently became one of HITEC's partners, and we kicked things off quite quickly. And right after starting our partnership, here we are 3 weeks later, able to collaborate on this event in partnership with MasterCard's Latin Network Business Resource. So as Omar mentioned, Miguel Gamiño about a little over a year ago did a session right when these webinar series were starting to happen. And we really wanted to kind of bring a follow-on conversation to that. Miguel Gamiño can't join today because he's traveling. So we're doing one better and bringing you 3 of our amazing leaders from MasterCard to share their perspectives and really talk about from a variety of different lenses, whether it be people and capabilities, whether it be our international markets, our other partnerships, enterprise partnerships, so many different viewpoints that we have here. So I'll be introducing our panelists. I will be then having them answer some of the questions that I've prepared, but I really hope to spend the last 20 minutes on hearing questions from you all. So we'll open it up and encourage you all to think of some questions, unmute yourselves and ask them directly, or feel free to use the chat as well. So let me get started with introducing our panelists. First, we have Kiki del Valle, who is Executive Vice President of Market Development in LAC at MasterCard. And in her role, she oversees operations and customer-facing activities, including market transformation strategy, business development, and relationship management with fintechs, merchants, digital partners, and payment service providers. So welcome to Kiki. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure being here, Rebecca. Thank you for the invitation.
Great. Next, we have Carlos Menendez, who is President of Enterprise Partnerships. In his role, he is responsible for driving enterprise-wide partnership strategy and innovation in new industries, helping MasterCard to use its technology and data insights in new ways for a host of diverse retail, business, and government partners. Thank you for being here, Carlos.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's great to hear your voice.
And last but not least, we have Lucrecia Borgonovo, who is the Chief Talent and Organizational Effectiveness Officer for MasterCard. And in her role, which is a relatively recent role, I believe, Lucrecia is responsible for developing and executing an integrated talent, leadership, culture, engagement, and organizational strategy in support of MasterCard's business goals. And this is a key role because it helps to align workforce strategies and ensure that the right talent, skills, and capabilities are in place to help MasterCard continue to evolve for continued success. For joining us, Lucrecia.
Hey, hola, HITEC. And thank you. So, looking forward to the conversation today. So I'll give the opportunity. So be kind to me because I'm very new in my job. Okay, so I see that Susan Warner is on the call. I may need to call a friend. Susan Warner leads talent philanthropy for MasterCard. So I may need to phone a friend in the middle of this conversation.
And all of our speakers are very passionate and are champions for gender balance, having Latino leadership, or serve as sponsors, whether it be in official roles or otherwise for the Latin Network Business Resource Group. And we're super excited to have them here. So let me dive right in and go ahead and ask the first question, which is, I introduced your roles in the official bio, but would love to kind of get your flavor of introducing yourself, who you are, and what you do at MasterCard. So Kiki, do you want to start?
Sure. So as you mentioned, Rebecca, Kiki Valle, I lead market development for Latin America, which in essence is I'm responsible for the strategy and also both looking at it from a short and a long-term trends and setting the direction for the business, as well as managing key relationships across different segments, the non-traditional segments. So when you look at MasterCard, you think about our traditional customers being the banks, but that expands to include other players like fintechs, retailers, commerce, digital players, governments. So a whole load of players that we work with. I've been with the organization for 13 years, based in Miami, and always within a digital capacity. So I've actually always been, be it on the partnership side or on the product side, always engaged to some extent in digital.
Thank you. Carlos, you're up.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. My name is Carlos Menendez. I'm part of the management committee at MasterCard. My responsibilities are varied, similar to Kiki's, and effectively looking for new opportunities for MasterCard to operate in, but not with fintechs, but with established players in the sense of what can we do with Microsoft? What can we do with Unilever? What can we do with, Sabre in the travel industry? And trying to piece that together in new ways. I'm based out of London. It was a 2-year assignment that's become 18 years. Still not sure how that happened. And I've been with MasterCard 11 of those years.
And Lucrecia?
Sure. So I think we talked a little bit about what I do, but on a personal note, I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina. So I'm not sure if there are some Argentinian people that come from that part of the world. I've been with MasterCard for a little over 3 years. And so my experience has always been in the HR world. And I'll tell a little bit about how I got into human resources because it's very much linked to the topic of doing well by doing good. And always sort of like in different multinational companies, in sort of like HR business partners or center of excellence type of roles. I've transitioned into leading talent and org effectiveness for MasterCard a little over 4 months. So Carlos, I had nothing to do with your 18-year assignment in London. But listen, at the end of the day, I think in a nutshell, if I think about, what is my role, I need to make sure that, at the end of the day, we have that talent, culture, leadership are really the competitive advantage of MasterCard. So that's what I think about, obsess about, dream about, and clearly diversity and inclusion is a huge part of, it's a huge enabler of this agenda.
Thank you all for introducing yourself in your words. So now we're going to dive into the topic of doing well by doing good, which you already started us off with, Lucrecia. Thank you for doing that. And I really wanted to hear what your personal experience is with MasterCard's commitment to doing well by doing good, and who or what has shaped your understanding of that topic. So happy to have any of you jump in on that one.
I'm happy to start. Oh, Kiki, do you want to go?
No, Lucrecia, go ahead. I'll go after. Don't worry about it.
So I'll tell a little bit about kind of like on a personal note. I was telling you I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I kind of how I got into human resources I think has a lot to do with this doing well by doing good. Probably that's probably the best way to showcase sort of like my most personal earliest experience in this space. But I really spent a lot of time, during university, advising students, kind of like college, high school students as it relates to their career. Argentina is a country, as you know, historically and still has a high unemployment rate. So I became incredibly passionate in really helping students figure out, sort of like how do they match their passions, which also were some of the highest demands in the marketplace. So started to really working with NGOs, and I got a role in government and really trying to link the worlds of education and the worlds of work. And by doing that, I started to really trying to understand, hey, how do I advise these kids, like what does the world of work really need, right? What does a companies like a Unilever or MasterCard or Coca-Cola, what are they looking for? So in doing that, I got really intrigued in human resources, right? Because at the end of the day, those were the people that I ended up spending most of my time trying to figure out who they were trying to recruit for, what type of skills they were looking for. So then kind of like trying to work on the other side and making sure that at the end of the day, right, the students were able to pursue their passions, but at the same time, like doing it in a way that was also practical, and it was very much market oriented. So later today, we'll talk a little bit about, some of the work that Susan and I or other people at MasterCard were doing in terms of really helping sort of like future-proof the workforce. But clearly, that passion has started off 20 plus years in my life.
Thanks, Lucrecia. Let me kind of like complement what Lucrecia is actually mentioning. I mean, I think that from my point of view, doing well by doing good has a different, which is really like the MasterCard mantra. I think it has a different meaning for everybody. So in my view, there's two lenses on the doing well by doing good. The first is actually the personal lens, which is a little bit of what Lucrecia was actually talking about, right? How do I as a person actually help others? I mean, this can include everything from volunteering for personal causes, from sitting on boards that are actually aligned with my areas of interest, from mentoring others, for example. I mean, think about how organizations operate today. In the wake of a disaster, for example, they may react by donating money. I mean, so there's a number of different ways that either devoting my personal time to volunteer at a local hospital during COVID, or being able to kind of like as a small business owner, that you can actually drive impact. They're all admirable ways in which we can obviously look at the mantra of how we're living the doing well by doing good. Today, on a personal basis, I mean, I'm the executive sponsor for the Women's Leadership Network in Latin America at MasterCard, which promotes leadership opportunities and training, career discussions for over 300 women in the region. So that's one way in which I kind of like practice my doing well by doing good. I think a more interesting lens and something that we as an organization are actually applying is how do we use this opportunity to leverage not just my expertise, my skill set, my network, but then also the company's assets and the technology that we actually have as an organization to drive a positive impact in society. So that can mean a number of different things, I think, but the idea that collectively we can drive meaningful and sustainable impact through new business models or new products or driving innovation. That's what, when we talk as an organization about doing well by doing good, that's what we mean. So it's moving away from an individual contribution, although there's certainly a personal objective with that, to now executing on a larger vision. And I think in this context, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done when we think of tackling, for example, the digital divide, or closing the gender gap, or granting financial access to SMEs, or driving sustainability. There's a lot of different causes that collectively to us as humanity, we're obviously suffering from. and that we can actually help support. So once you recognize that opportunity within this context, you can find greater opportunities for partnership across different sectors, like the government, like fintechs, and like banks, which is a little bit about what I do in helping drive networks or partnerships across all of these different players. So I'm looking at it not just in the how can I contribute individually, but then also how can I pull together the resources that we have as an organization to think about how to drive a greater impact in society.
If I could just add to that, because I completely agree with both of you. We have a personal responsibility to do better for ourselves, our family, and our community. And I think what MasterCard is trying to do, which is based on a lot of our skill sets and experiences, is philanthropy is important, and we're going to continue to do philanthropy, but we also need to do this in a commercially viable way, where we build sort of infrastructures and partnerships that can, lift economic tides and help all. And that's really what we're trying to do at MasterCard. And that's why it's, doing well by doing good. It's not doing well and doing good, or doing well certainly, or doing good. It's really, how do we get more accomplished in this world by creating viable economic structures?
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. And you all touched already on some of the ways that this theme of doing well by doing good shows up in your area of business, not just in a personal way. So I'm curious, maybe thinking about a couple of different lenses, just given obviously technology and digital seeing such growth in the last year and being a core part of MasterCard's business. Wanted to hear if you have any perspectives on how new technology or digital practices, policies can be a mechanism for transformation, or how you're using your role, if maybe you're not directly working with technology, how you're using your role to shed light on some of the opportunities that exist.
Sure.
If you want me to start on that one, or do you want to start, Carlos?
Go ahead, Kiki. Wait.
Sure. Look, I think it's interesting because sometimes we think about technology in the context of the technology being the solution to everything. And what we know is that technology is very much of an enabler. It's a conduit to change, but it requires a problem or a use case in order to be effective. I mean, you can have the best idea in the world, but if you're not solving a real need, it's not going to matter. So we can get into the details about how, new tech like IoT, AI, data is all impacting change. But rather than be philosophical, let me try to give you a concrete example. So a few years ago, I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. My parents are still living there. And back in 2018, we had the worst hurricane in history, Hurricane Maria, which impacted the entire island. And unfortunately, within that, not only did I not have connectivity with my parents for 8 days, after which I didn't know how they were doing, but for 9 months thereafter, they actually didn't have access to energy. And at the time, I was actually managing the IoT team. And one of the key things that we did as part of IoT, because it was a little bit frustrating for me thinking about the fact that I couldn't necessarily help them. And it got us thinking of how many other people around the world don't have actually access to electricity. And it turns out that over 1 billion people around the world don't have access to this basic need, mostly in Africa and then sub-Saharan Asia, sub-Saharan Africa and then Southeast Asia. So the lack of energy is a universal matter. And one of the things that we did at MasterCard is that we came up with a solution that was actually focusing on solar panels, off-grid solutions with an embedded QR in the battery pack. And basically what we were facilitating was the idea that a consumer could actually open up their mobile device, scan the QR code, use funds that they had already topped up from their mobile, their mobile provider. And basically from there, they would light up that solar panel and use energy accordingly. So it's a solution that to many, it may not necessarily make sense. I mean, certainly for us in the US, we don't need it. We actually have the infrastructure. But for over 1 billion people around the world, the ability to actually have connectivity, an energy device, a solar panel, and then embedding payments within it allows us to build the entire sustainable model so that everybody can actually benefit from this. So it's a question about inclusion, in this case about energy inclusion, but one in which payments becomes a key component for everybody to be able to operate this ecosystem. So it's what we call pay on demand or pay-go today. It's a solution that is actually live in Africa, but it's one in which technology serves to help that segment of the population gain access to this very basic human need so that they're not disadvantaged, so that it allows that midwife to deliver the baby in the middle of the night. It allows for that small, medium-sized owner to open up later during the day so that they can actually operate after hours, or even that parent to be able to do homework with their kids. So just think about it from that point of view. And that's just one example of ways in which we think about technology and how can we at MasterCard actually help bring these solutions to market.
Kiki and I have been spending a lot of time together because I'm with you. It's not about the technology. It's about the business model. It's about how we make this work with various partners. The technology is part of that, but you can even see during COVID time, we helped small businesses around the world get online to sell because of the need to remote selling. And we were able to look at data that shows they grew 6% quicker. So here was a problem, here was a need, and a business model that served them. We do this, as Kiki has said, in financial inclusion in many ways. My team manages supply chain finance around the world, and we've done cases in Africa with Unilever lending money to small businesses, in Asia with the Asian Development Bank lending, once again, money to small wholesalers and small bodegas effectively. By the way, Kiki, I was born in Puerto Rico too. I don't know if you know Santurce. There's this incredible need everywhere. And what the technology does as we figure out the right models that work to meet these underlying needs is it allows us to scale and reach in a way that couldn't happen before. And so the usual challenges of opening up new areas, for those of us who are old enough to remember when you opened up countries without the benefit of the internet, were the fixed costs. How did you send people down there? What did you have to build up? And technology has leveled that. You can reach, you can provide a standard footprint. You can really achieve so much more with a lot less effort, so to speak. And we as a company and as a world need to take that opportunity to reshape the world, not to just simply, do more for the people who have more, but figure out how we push these economic benefits across the world in a more even fashion. And a lot of what MasterCard is doing is focused on that because of our financial inclusion imperative as part of doing well by doing good.
So Rebecca, building on what my colleague said, I think you guys are just really great examples, right, of what we're all about as a company. Clearly you can hear through the examples of Kiki and Carlos that we're very much a purpose-driven organization. And we believe that, that a big part of our value proposition is to give people like Carlos and Kiki's and their teams and our 20,000 plus employees the opportunity to really do purpose-driven work. In terms of working with our customers, communities, and our coworkers in ways that drive impact. So how do we go about doing this? Clearly, key is to have leaders like Kiki and Carlos, and to attract them and to develop purpose-driven leaders that are going to drive the future of our company and the future of the communities in a positive way. So we talk quite a bit about a decency quotient. You probably may have heard this from our former CEO, Ajay Banga. So when we think about leadership and what are the leaders of the future or the current leaders that we need in the organization, is leaders that have strong IQ, EQ that we're all familiar with, but also at MasterCard, we talk quite a bit about decency quotient, which again speaks about, like basically basic things, right? But sort of like treat yourself like you want to be treated. Ajay Banga talked a lot about, put your hand on somebody's back, right? Not in their face, making sure that we're giving everybody an equal playing field and giving everybody a chance to win. So DQ is a huge part of our culture and clearly is a collective leaders that come together to build that culture. So key to my job is to make sure that we're really attracting and developing and grooming these type of leaders for the future. The other piece that I would tell you is, and I think you can hear through the examples of Carlos and Kiki, social impact plays a huge role in how we develop leaders at all levels. is really part and parcel of our leadership development efforts. It's really embedded in our leadership development programs, and all of our employees at all levels really see volunteering or being part of a non-for-profit boards, pro bono programs, mentoring, you name it, right? They all see that as a huge part of continue to developing themselves as leaders in the organization and leaders in the communities in which they live. And we also have a really pretty robust Force for Good awards program that is being led by Susan Warner, who's on the call, that really recognizes all this great leadership. The other two pieces that I would say, going back to my comment in the beginning as it relates to, how do you future-proof the workforce, which I think is an important part of, the role that we have to do as an organization, is we have an initiative that is called Girls for Tech. Basically is our signature STEM program, which is a curriculum for girls that are 8 to 12 years old. And basically the whole goal of the program is to leverage the expertise our employees have in payment technology and really inspire students around the world to become the tech leaders of tomorrow. So we do that we have a learning curriculum. And as I said before, our employees very much get involved in delivering that training and also mentoring these girls. So we're very excited about this opportunity. And if time allows, we can talk a little bit about how we have taken this digital during COVID. And then the other piece that we're starting to grow in is in apprenticeships. So working very closely with different local governments, community colleges, and then other organizations in the ecosystem as it relates to how can we, again, future-proof skills in hot skill areas like cyber and AI, IoT, you name it, right? So what is the role that MasterCard can have in terms of, again, preparing students for tomorrow, but also even people that have been out of the workforce, right, in re-entering that workforce. So more to come. We're piloting in some places in the US, as Susan knows, and really our goal is to be able to scale this more broadly and again, connecting the underserved and creating equal access and opportunities for all.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear how the business initiatives can vary so much based on where you sit in the organization, how you work with digital solutions, technology, or otherwise. So my next question is, we're much over a year into the pandemic, and we've certainly seen signs of recovery in the US and other parts of the world, but it's a continued conversation that is always evolving. And so wanted to hear sort of what are some of the things that you're thinking about, or maybe that you're excited about when you consider the possibilities of life after, or towards the tail end of a pandemic, and tying that into also the evolution of corporate social responsibility.
Sure. But if you don't mind, I'll just start this one very quickly. I think, as the world economy and the way we work and live is reshaped post-COVID, this is our chance to bend it in a way that makes more sense for everybody on the planet. Inertia is such a big part of everything that happens in governments and businesses in our lives. Now, because of COVID, perhaps a bit of a silver lining, we can think of how we act now to change the world for the future. And my team in particular, we've taken two fronts. We've taken the global cities work that you heard from Miguel Gamiño in particular, because cities this is an urbanizing world. Cities are where people are and where people need a lot of the help. And so we've taken partnerships with various cities, for instance, in LA, and got cards into people's hands with some of our partners, Mocafy and Oracle, so that we can get emergency funds, $37 million, so I think almost 40,000 families in the nick of time when they needed it most. But we've done it in a way that lays an infrastructure for future access to digital identity, to security, to bank accounts, so that we can build upon that. I'm traveling for business again, which is kind of exciting. And I just came from St. Louis, and we took the work we've done in LA, and we're applying it to talking to the St. Louis city government of how we could help them, and work with Atlanta and Birmingham and various cities around the world. So we see a lot of this corporate social responsibility taking part just in the daily operation of residents in a city. I also see a whole other framework that my team is working on, which is on the financing of small businesses. Small businesses are the heart of our lives, right? It would be terrible if we went to every city and it was only one coffee shop globally or one sort of, restaurant globally. And so we need to make sure that the character of a city, the employment opportunities, the culture comes out in these small businesses. Because of COVID, there's now a $3 trillion gap in lending to small businesses. There's been a pullback of credit criteria. I mean, the gap was there before, now it's 3 times worse. How do we work with small businesses and governments to bring money down to the people who need it most to start that? And that's the work my team is also doing with the likes of SAP and many other companies around the world. And so we're taking this opportunity of a new world to shape it in a way that makes sense for at least our priorities and what we feel will pay most benefit to the cultures of the various cities and MasterCard itself.
If I can add to that, I mean, probably because Latin America is so close to all of you. Latin America is probably the region that right now is the farthest away from recovery. That's the reality. We're seeing that the region, in many cases, is still having to go through lockdowns while there are openings in some places. I mean, like it's a very harsh reality, and it's going to take some time for us in LAC to be able to recover. What we have actually been focusing on, and in the middle of the pandemic, one of the things that we did is that we actually called upon the private sector to help. We actually formed, and it's going to sound funny to you guys, but we actually formed the Tech for Good Alliance about a year ago. And the Tech for Good Alliance was actually, it's an alliance that we have with banks, with fintechs of the likes of PayPal, Mercado Libre, Santander, Citibanamex, it's AXA. So there's a number of different entities that we pull together so that collectively we could actually help double down on financial inclusion efforts and digital inclusion efforts. So there's a number of different initiatives that we have going on around the entire region. From everything, an example of that is we're working with PayPal on a small, medium-sized business opportunity. We're also working with Mercado Libre, for example, to actually adapt their own platform, partnering with Common Sense Lab as well, to see how can consumer behavior at the platform level, at their marketplace, can actually help us drive financial usage. So, driving education and training, changing little cues within the platform itself, so that we can all benefit from this. So those are things that we're actually working on. Just yesterday, we're also partnering with the public sector, much more open, much more now. Just yesterday, we announced, for example, a regional digitalization alliance for women, specifically focusing on closing the gender gap for women, working with the Ministry of Chile, but then also including more different governments like Mexico, Costa Rica, Panama, as well as Microsoft and the UN. So that in it, we actually work on creating a trade platform so that women have an opportunity to now sell cross borders. So now they have an opportunity to actually sell. A woman that is actually a small entrepreneur has not only the digital means to be able to sell their product or their service abroad or even domestically in Chile, but they also have training. They have digital skill sets that we're also including. We're also tying in Girls for Tech. Lucrecia explained it earlier. So within that, now we actually have an opportunity to virtually deliver our Girls for Tech program and then be able to actually reach a larger number of girls so that we get ready for that next generation. That's work that we're doing with the government sector, and then also bringing in some of our partners like Microsoft, like Super Digital, which is a fintech arm of Santander. So that's all very relevant. And then I think that the last piece that I would highlight is that financial inclusion remains a very big problem for us in LAC. 45% of the population is still financially excluded, or underserved. I think one of the silver linings that we got from the pandemic is the idea that in many ways, the government disbursements that were provided allowed for some type of access to financial products. And from that access, now we're focusing on really driving the use. So 40 million Latin Americans were able to, for the first time, have a card, a digital means to actually receive payment from the government, which is great. It's progress. Now we need to make sure that that progress is not reversed. So that's a lot of what we do, working directly with fintechs, and then also helping in the digital transformation of the banks. I think everybody, from retailers to governments to banks, everybody has had to invest in digital transformation. So it's a little bit of what has happened or what has transpired from COVID, but we need to make sure that we're actually not reversing on the progress that has already been made.
Okay, Rebecca, I know we're short on time, and Kiki totally stole my thunder.
I'm sorry.
Girl for tech digitally, so thank you, Kiki, for that. All kidding aside, listen, what obviously we've learned through the pandemic is that that at the end of the day, right, what we never thought that we could take digitally, we can, right? And the future probably looks like a combo of this physical and digital. So our ability to scale and amplify a lot of our programs, right, in support of the greater good of our own employees, but also the communities that we're working, that just became very, very clear that is what we thought was not possible is incredibly possible. So the opportunities are endless. So Kiki gave this really great example of Girl for Tech, and under Susan's leadership, right, how we took it really digitally with some great partnerships with Discovery Education, right, creating this digital curriculum, and we touched what was like more than 1 million girls in the US and in Canada. So this is just one example of what the possibilities, which are endless. And I can tell you, even on university recruitment, right, campus recruitment is a huge part of our talent strategy at MasterCard. And again, through the pandemic, we have been able to attract talent from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different parts of the world that before we were constrained about kind of like physical recruitment, we were unable to do so. So I think that this really has opened up the possibilities in terms of, you know, the talent that we can kind of like attract, the talent that we can help influence in the marketplace. We have another great initiative, Relaunch Your Career, right, where we really help kind of like women that have been out of the marketplace for a while, right? So again, going back to the whole point about helping future-proof the workforce. So we basically help them re-enter the workforce. And that is something that, again, we have been able to very successfully do and continue to scale and grow that program even during the pandemic and in a digitally way. So clearly the world will now go back to normal, and the CSR world will forever be high.
Thank you. It's nice to hear some silver linings from all of this, and it's great to see the different ways that MasterCard is approaching those opportunities. So like I mentioned in the beginning, I now want to turn it over to you all and see if folks have any questions. So feel free to unmute yourself, raise your hand, and I'm happy to call you, or you can go ahead and put anything in the chat as well, and I'll read it out. But would love to hear what's on your minds and if there's anything you'd like to ask of our panelists.
All right, I'll help break the ice. Benny Gonzalez from Tampa.
Hi, Benny.
So Latinos in the US, according to several studies, have a GDP of around $2 trillion, which is considerably large, could be surpassing France's GDP in the next few years. Yet we have challenges with economic participation and inclusion in the US. There was an article or a picture that went viral about these two girls hanging out in a parking lot at a Taco Bell. They were getting internet from Taco Bell in order to be able to do their homework. And I can't remember, one of you mentioned the challenges with the digital divide. Yeah, yet we also in technology have very low participation of Hispanics, which technology has some of the highest paying jobs available in the US. We have some of the fastest growing population. So if you put a number of things together, if we could attract more Hispanics, younger Hispanics, to participate in technology jobs, their incomes would go higher, and therefore their contribution to the US economy would be much higher. So I'm glad to hear about what you're doing with Girls to Code, etc. But what else is MasterCard doing, and are you able to see partnerships coming up with other financial institutions like JP Morgan, etc., to further improve the situation with the digital divide and encourage young people to get technology careers?
I mean, I can comment on it briefly. Certainly Girls for Tech and Girls Who Code are part of our initiatives in the US, are big participants of that. The situation where we put a lot of effort in the US also is in something we call Master Your Card, which is about financial education training as one of the many steps in terms of economic gains that Hispanics and many other immigrant and disadvantaged groups need help with. Because fundamentally, we feel that education is important, but the financial education is particularly important for sort of long-term economic planning, which is really key to economic gain. We don't do this by ourselves. We partner with the governments. We partner with companies like, I think Everfi is the name of the one in the US also that does some of this training. I don't have the numbers at the top of my head necessarily, or tips of my fingers, but I will get together the list of the activities in the US, and hopefully we can share them via HITEC with the broader participants in this call, because there are opportunities or things that we're doing to find new partners to do more, and also for anyone who wants to join. We clearly see as a challenge when we talk about financial inclusion, we're not just focused on the developing world, we're also focusing on the needs of the US and even Western Europe and the such. More familiar with some of the programs, but happy to share that at the follow-up. I don't know, Lucrecia and Kiki, if you had anything you would add to that.
Yeah, I think the two things that I would add is that it's not just about women actually bridging technology in the form of workplace, right? I mean, like, it's also how do we get real or good access to any tool that they may need as an SME, as an example, right? So another example that we have is in the middle of the pandemic, we have a program that is called Digital Doors. And Digital Doors is actually accessible by anybody. You can Google Digital Doors MasterCard. And in it, what it actually does is that it's brought a number of different partners of ours to the table so that they can actually offer different tools, including, for example, the ability to set up your own website, as an example, advertise via Google, work with Stripe, and then having an offer from Stripe. I mean, so we brought together like all the different things that you would actually have to do to be able to operate in the digital environment. So it's not just about, commerce or making purchases and driving payments. It's also for us very much about how do we actually help solve for some of the skill sets that are needed within the digital ecosystem. That's why the Regional Digitalization Alliance for us in LAC, that's what it's actually about. Digital Doors is one way that we can actually bridge that gap with the support of all of our partners. I mean, so that's an active effort that is actually alive in the US. I think beyond that, I mean, I agree with Carlos. I mean, like the Girls for Tech program, the Master Your Code, what we're doing to obviously help push SMEs and working with our partners with the banks to be able to also grant credit or allow for access to credit to all of these companies, all the SMEs is another big push that we're actually that we're also driving.
Yeah, Manny, I think it's a great question. I would just echo everything that was said. Again, from my talent front, right? I mean, I talked quite a bit about those areas that we're focusing on, and the focus is honestly continue to amplify, continue to scale, right? So I talked about Girls for Tech. We're working on the next generation of Girls for Tech, not just from taking it digitally, but also expanding it to other age groups and locations. So that's a big one. And then apprenticeships, I was telling you, sort of like, not everybody can afford, right? Go to the university in particular. We know going to the university in this country is pretty expensive, right? So there are some other things that we can do from an apprenticeship perspective. And that's an area that we're definitely focusing on in terms of, community colleges or micro-credentials, right? So how can we provide in the space that we know quite well, alternative opportunities and alternative careers right, for different individuals, and again, create a much more equal playing field. Great question.
Thanks. So I guess I'll throw one out there just to see how it goes. And by the way, hi Benny, how you doing?
Hey,
So hearing what I'm hearing, you're doing a lot for the community, which is amazing. You're doing a lot for attraction, which is amazing. But everyone always seems to have that problem in the retention perspective. And I was just curious as to what are you doing to help from within promote Latinos, Latinas, Latinx, Hispanic, whatever you want to call us, people forward so that we're moving through the ranks? Because quite frankly, the whole mantra of HITEC is push up, pull up. And we can't pull up if no one's helping push up. So what are some of the things that are going on to help move that forward?
Sure. It's of course another really good question. Well, hopefully the representation that you have in this panel, we do have in our leadership team quite a number of what I would say very influential Latinos. So we couldn't bring them all today, but rest assured that we do, and that is something that obviously needs to continue to grow, Jason. I can tell you the different things that we do, and Kiki talked a little bit about that, right? So we have different business resource groups that are incredibly active, and Rebeca is part of one of them as it relates to the Latino community. So that's a group that is incredibly active in terms of really making sure that we're really providing good opportunities for our Hispanic employees. What else I could tell you? Sponsorships, right? So that is something that, we have senior leaders sort of like sponsoring our diverse talent across the organization. There are multiple other different programs that we have, whether it is like mentoring programs that are really focused on really helping advance the career opportunities of our diverse talent. So I think that we feel, and then obviously you have, to your point, right, you have to attract them, right, and then you have to develop them, you have to retain them, and then you have to continue to develop them. But we're constantly keeping an eye and really making sure that, hey, as we look at our succession planning within the organization, do we have a diverse pipeline, and then how we can differentially invest in some of these up and coming diverse talent to make sure that they can really unlock their potential.
I think, HR provides structure for us to track and to understand where we're performing from just a numbers perspective. How many are getting promoted? What levels are they, et cetera. As individual managers, we have responsibilities, and my team does, in terms of mentees of people of color, Hispanics, African Americans, Asian Americans, et cetera, along with, there is a tendency for like to hire like, right? And so you do get more distributions of Latinos, Latinas, Hispanics, whatever we call ourselves nowadays, in my team, for example, and I'm sure in Kiki's team. And so as we rise through the organization and expand areas of responsibilities, when names get brought up more naturally, and I think that is the intent, right? Where we're measuring people equally across all different types, and that's a lot of times it's just a matter of bringing forth the right candidates and exposing to them. I will tell you that MasterCard is truly colorblind in that sense. We are very, very much focused on results. We're a global company, so we have people from everywhere. So it doesn't really matter where you're from, it's what you can get done. That said, we do recognize that there are historical challenges, and we're working through them both with HR and in our individual teams.
I think from a region point of view, what I can tell you is that there's a very big focus on diversity and inclusion. We have actually publicly made statements, and the last one being at the UN Women Forum in Paris, about our commitment to actually reach gender equality, to the point that we can now confirm that for every $1 that a man is paid, a woman is paid. I mean, so that is actually quite big efforts that we're actually making. I think besides that, you have, there's a very big push, and our vice chairman, Ann Carnes, is the sponsor of the 30% Club, which is a huge global initiative, really trying to focus on having at least a 30% representation at the board across global organizations. And that MasterCard is a very big proponent. We are actively participating in the form of mentorships or mentor or mentorships, so I myself have actually been a mentor in different programs, and we're launching in specific chapters across Latin America as well. Chile, Mexico, and Colombia now actually, and Brazil now actually have a chapter of the 30% Club. So we're also working with the community. We're also bringing in as much as we can other organizations as well, so that we can have an influence and drive diversity at the boardroom. Because as Carlos was explaining, unless we actually change the top, I mean, nothing is going to filter down. So it's more related to women, but it is because we're actually pushing it in LAC, it is driving an impact. So that's a little bit about what we're doing, but rest assured that as an organization, there's a ton that we have actually been pushing on formalizing commitments, and Lucrecia can go into more details on that. But a lot that we have actually done to reach equality within the organization as well.
Thank you for both of those questions. Really thoughtful. Any final questions? Time for one more. All right, so maybe I'll do a rapid fire question to finalize things, which is just, if you were to leave the group with one thought, how do you think that you yourself or MasterCard can move everyone closer to inclusion or meaningful impact?
If I can start, I think tackling this big problem is a big responsibility, and it cannot be accomplished alone. So one thing that we know is that we need collective efforts to be able to do this. I mean, so as we think about inclusion, diversity, and as I was talking before about the 30% Club, we got to do this with other organizations as well. So partnerships is key. Partnerships is obviously what's going to allow us to get this done in a meaningful way, and in a way that is also accelerated. So I mean, we need the help, we need the support. So counting on even the folks in this group to see how we can actually partner together.
Yeah, I was gonna say, every act matters, and to get together, to your point, Kiki, we can be a force for good, but it's going to take everybody to make that happen. I can tell you, from a MasterCard standpoint, going back to some of the things that we're doing, is 5 years ago we had 2 community engagement days or community days, and now we have 5, right? So we know employees want to contribute. We know employees really want to be part of addressing and having meaningful social impact. So that is just one good small example, but that we can that we can all take advantage of and think about how we can collectively be and create a much more inclusive and have much more social impact collectively.
I would just briefly add that I do think we need commercially viable models to get this moving and have this impact in total, but we also need individual effort. And so, to the gentleman who talked about, promoting people and raising from within, invite him or anyone else to call me, reach me out, and we'll see through our context that what we can do more for the Hispanics that we know and the positions that are out there, because this is a tremendous time in terms of demand for strong employees, and happy to help. Carlos Menendez on LinkedIn. I do reply to every email. It takes me a while sometimes.
Well, thank you so much. I want to extend a big thanks to our 3 panelists. Really appreciate your perspectives, your thoughts, and thank you to everyone who joined today. We hope that you enjoyed this first of hopefully many MasterCard and HITEC events. I know that you all receive a follow-up survey, and we'd love to hear from you. And there's also going to be a link included if you do want to stay in touch with MasterCard as an organization. So thank you again. I believe some of us will stick around for networking, but not sure, Omar and Maria, if there's anything else that you would add.
No, just thank you, Rebecca, for leading this conversation, and thank you, Kiki, Lucrecia, and Carlos, and thank you to the greater community and HITEC Familia at MasterCard. We appreciate the partnership. We're excited to have you guys on board as one of our newest corporate partners, and we look forward to continuing to work with you to do some of this good that we're talking about. So thank you very, very much. I hope people are able to stick around for networking. I have to drop for another call right now, but hope all of you have a great weekend and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you for